Good morning, ladies. We have ladies all on, so that's perfect. Good, good. Not that men aren't welcome.
Mm.
So, hi, I'm going to introduce myself and just go ahead and get started. My name is 𝐸𝐴𝐴. I am a body image confidence coach. I am very passionate about empowering women and girls to embrace their body confidence, resilience, and well-being. I have over 15 years of corporate experience in financial services and, in financial and operations. Um, for Fortune 500 companies. I loved the job. I loved the people, not all of them, but I realized that the higher I went in corporate, the more pressure I felt, and I started to see my confidence just eroded over and over and over again. And so during the pandemic, I decided to not go back to corporate, but instead use the rest of my life to empower women and young girls. And so that's what I do today. And that being said, I'm so excited to be doing this webinar with my darling co-host, Carolina. So I'm going to hand you over to introduce yourself. Go
Um,
ahead, Carolina.
Thank you, Ma. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Carolina, and I call myself the Rat Race Recovery Coach. And what I do is I support basically everybody that feels stressed, rushed, and that hyper performance that they need to have in the workplace. Um, and take that in some cases to their own business where they feel that same stress and that same need to perform, which actually damages usually their business and their career. Because let's be honest, none of us are, let's say, a nicer and more gentle person when we are stressed than when we are genuinely authentic and in our more relaxed. So, yes, uh, I'm very much looking forward to this workshop today, and let's get started.
All right, sounds good. All right, so today, just to give you a little overview of what you can expect from today's webinar, we're going to talk about workplace trauma. Now, I use that term lightly because it's anything that pretty much crosses your boundaries. So you can call it workplace trauma, a toxic environment, that whole experience. So you hear Carolina and I use those terms interchangeably, but you all know what it means. It's basically you feeling uncomfortable at work and due to experiences. And then we're going to talk about how that impacts our body confidence. What does that look like? We'll probably touch on some pillars that it affects. And then we're going to give you some practical strategies for overcoming this toxic environment, workplace trauma, call it what you want. And then hopefully you'll discover ways to rebuild your confidence and navigate the professional landscape post-trauma. Any questions, thoughts? Okay, let's get started. So right off the top of your head, what does workplace trauma or a toxic environment feel like for you? For me, in my own opinion, I think it's very personal to each of us. For me, in corporate, workplace trauma was the the unnecessary solicitations I received from our male counterparts on a continuous basis. It was my boss throwing a report at me that injured my face. I got a paper cut because he felt like my financial input was invalid, and he was proven wrong by the end of that day. It was pretty much any experience that I had that crossed my boundaries and made me feel very unsafe in that environment, causing a lot of emotional stress and making it a very toxic place for me to exist. Anybody want to come off camera and just, sorry, not come off camera, but come off mute and just share some of your experiences, Carolina? What was that? What does your workplace trauma feel like for you?
So for me, it was more subtle. My workplace trauma resulted in resulted at the end of the day me sitting in my car and driving home crying because I couldn't handle the immense pressure that was put on me. So it wasn't something big like a big event that happened or somebody yelling at me, although that happened as well. But for me, it was like a gradual buildup of pressure and a little bit more every day. And little remarks that were made, like when you would go home at well, I think I said this sometime, when you would go home at 7 and people would ask you, what, you're going home already? And it's like, yes, I've had my 13-hour workday, which is quite amazing already that I'm still here. So little things, little remarks, and little little things that make you doubt yourself and make you doubt if
Right.
you
So,
are
mhm.
if you're in the right spots, if you can even handle all this, and which also make you look at your colleagues like, how do they handle this, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was, I dealt with the bullying, there was the discrimination, there's the gender bias. I think all of we women can relate to that, being, knowing that you were overlooked for no other reason other than your physical attributes, whether it's your race, whether it's how shapely or not you are. It was all that put together that just compounded to what I felt was a toxic environment. And and I'll be honest, it wasn't like everybody I worked with. It was certain people, that just felt like they felt like they were in a role. And as a result of being in that role, they had every right to treat women, especially with such negativity. And a lot of us just, at the time, we just took it because we didn't know any better. For me, I didn't know any better because I'm an immigrant. And I came to this country, and one of the companies I worked at, they were sponsoring me, and they knew that. And they took advantage of the fact that I could be deported or could be sent back if I lost my
Mm-hmm.
sponsorship.
Mm.
And so what that looked like for me was, oftentimes they would give me a report at 4 p.m. and tell me it's due by the next morning for an 8 a.m. meeting. And this happened multiple times during the week. Please raise your hand if any of this resonates, if any of you have experienced some of what we're talking about. We want this to be a very dynamic conversation. So I saw Elizabeth. It sounds like a lot of this resonates with you too. Feel free to come off mute if you want to speak or share, or raise your hand.
I would love to share because both of your examples resonate with me. My last workplace was extremely toxic. The gender bias, of course, gaslighting, emotional abuse, being told I was stupid. I have a background in software troubleshooting, and I would let them know something was wrong with the website. And other people would come to me and be like, something's wrong. And I would try and fix it, knowing, and I would give them a clear path of what was wrong. They would go in and fix it and then email everybody and tell everybody that nothing was wrong. So it was just a horrible work. I'm still have PTSD because of it now, but I can completely resonate with what you're saying.
And I'm so sorry,
Thank you.
Elizabeth, that you had to experience that, because really you shouldn't have had, and it's absolutely ridiculous that we in general, people experience such an unsafe environment. It's that's I mean, and this is real stress. It fixes itself in your body. It fixes itself in your confidence. It fixes itself, and it's gets stuck in your system. And these have long-term effects. I mean, I grew up also with my father, for example, that worked very hard, and talking about long-term effect, right? He at some point he was retired, and up to 2 years after his retirement, the stress was still leaving his body. It was still leaving his system. So Elizabeth, I can only imagine how that is for you, because he was a male and in an environment that for him was safe. I could see him, I could see that stress still everywhere in him. So you having experienced all of that, I mean, life shouldn't be that unfair. Huh? Yeah, just wanted to
I-
say that I really want to acknowledge you for being here today and sharing that. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Elizabeth, I commend you for just showing up. We felt like this was a necessary conversation that not a lot of people are talking about, or at least if they're addressing it, they're not creating a safe enough space where people can just share. And one of our goals with this conversation, with this webinar, is not just to share experiences, but to give you practical strategies that you can now start to build back your confidence and implement so you can navigate the landscape of your workplace. So that being said, I'm going to move on to the next slide. But like Carolina said, it really impacts different aspects of our being. All of us have experienced it to some extent. So it goes without saying that, you know, it increases your stress, your anxiety. For some of us, it's PTSD. I still have some PTSD, things that I'm working through. But over the years, I've learned to navigate it and how to deal with a toxic environment. So let's talk about what are some of the signs of this toxic environment. For me, when I'll be honest, I don't think I mentioned it, but I'm from Nigeria and I'm an immigrant. When I came here, I was very naive. And I don't think I ever knew what anxiety felt like or the depression. For me, all I knew was that my heart was constantly racing every time I would go to work. On Sunday night, I would start to literally break out in sweats, dreading going to work the next day. I didn't know that was anxiety. In my country, we didn't really talk about anxiety, at least not at that age, not in your teens, early 20s. We were, you know, life was easy, happy-go-lucky. For me, it was at the end of the day, just feeling drained and exhausted, a type of exhaustion that goes beyond just, you know, how you feel and after you go through a workout. No, after you do a good workout, you get energized and, you know, and it feels good for your body. This was a negative type of exhaustion where I just struggled to get up the next day to go back to work. For some others, it's loss of appetite. It's also an increase in appetite. For me, it was an increase in appetite. I used food as a camouflage for some of the things that I was feeling and going through. And yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, sorry, I have a cat here. Let me remove her.
Does the cat have some workplace
See,
trauma?
if it's not technology, it's animals. Um, so yeah, it's you know, it's the same. The whole confidence thing. It fixes in your body, but it's also we don't really realize if you are confident, your entire posture is different, right? You hold your head high, your shoulders are back, you speak with a different voice than when you are not confident. And all that, if you are constantly under pressure, what happens is you literally start to shrink because you're trying to hide yourself.
Yeah.
So there's this entire body posture that you get pain in your neck, you get pain in your shoulders, you get pain in your lower back, and that's just one thing. The other thing is when you're constantly under stress. I mean, this is the confidence part, but when you're constantly under stress and you're behind your computer with, I mean, it's almost like the zombie type of thing, right? Shoulders up, you barely have a neck, and everything starts to starts to hurt at some point. Um, Emotions are not just in your head, and thoughts are not just manifesting up here. Your thoughts will go through your entire body, and uh, they will fix themselves somewhere, and that posture will then you will take that home, right? Because that weight is still on you. You will take that home, and exactly there, you will also look yourself in the mirror and you think, the dress looks so nice when I bought it. Why isn't it looking nice today? And so the thoughts that come up during the day about completely different subjects, am I doing this right? They come back on other occasions where it is, do I still look okay? Do I still feel okay? Right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, for me, it's interesting you mentioned the idea of how you present yourself. For those days that I was dreading going into work, I noticed that the only thing that got me out of bed was the idea of dressing up. So fashion now became my coping mechanism to boost my confidence, to get up and go to work, because it was one of those few things that I felt like I had control over. I could control how I looked. I could control how the clothes made me feel, because I knew the minute I walked in through those doors, if it wasn't this mandatory meeting we had to go to, which was going to be another strip down of everything we're not doing well as a team and how we're missing our numbers and all of that. But at least I knew I could control my outfits. And there were certain outfits that I would wear that just gave me a sense of empowerment. And so that worked for a while. That approach worked for a while. But trust me, by the end of the day, to Carolina's point, I was walking out the door with the slouch shoulders, that the suit, the blazer didn't look that good anymore, my hair a hot mess, and just trying to jump on the train and get home as quickly as possible to my loved ones. So yeah, interesting point you mentioned about how it presents itself in the physical. Anyone want to jump in and share here kind of how it's manifested for you in one way or the other?
I find that so I find that an interesting point, saying I couldn't wait to jump in the car and go home to my loved ones. And I love that sentence. And yet for me, that was the most difficult part. Because after having so much pressure put on, and in my line of work, things were never good enough. I could do this amazing thing, and then and people would say, "Oh, good that it's done." And I would think, I worked so hard on that. Good that it's done. Not even, "Oh, thank you so much for doing that." So, and then that entire phase was like, okay, and now I feel like a failure, and then I have to go into that car, go home, and I would drag that with me. I wasn't that enthusiastic to go out and to be back home, because people, you come home and people ask, how was your day? Well, my day was, and you would make up a story. You would make up a story and say, well, my day was something. Um, because you also don't want to come home and even if you share, you don't want to start your every day. You don't want to start with, no, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to keep strong. You want to keep your head high. There's also a part that you don't want to admit to yourself that it's that bad, because once you admit it to yourself, it feels that you need to do something about that as well. Am I right?
Yeah, you're perfectly right. I think for, again, being so young at the time, a lot of it, I lived in denial. Because again, I didn't really understand what this was. All I knew was it wasn't normal. It was very foreign to how I was raised. It was very foreign to the way I saw my parents when they were in the workforce and how much they loved their job. My mom loved her job, but that was back in Nigeria. So for me, it was, adjusting to the culture here as a whole, then the work culture at the different companies I worked at, and then the different bosses and the different teams. And then when I finally got to the boardroom, oh my goodness, that was the worst. There were several situations I saw fellow leaders, women leaders, break down in tears during board meetings, just literally stripped of every degree of confidence, every degree of of visibility, just everything that just made them whole. And that's when I started to realize that this is not normal. This is
It's
a problem.
definitely not normal. It's definitely not normal. And
no one was speaking up.
sorry.
Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
that the thing is also that you say, well, I was naive because I came from Nigeria, in this case, from a different country into this country. But I think that if you look at how people start their working life, I think everybody is naive. And Susan might be relate to this. We had a conversation about this. We met this morning, and we happened to have a conversation about that. That a lot of students, they transition from their student life into their work life, not knowing what to expect. And if I look back at how my work life started, I was naive as well. And the entire people giving you a slap on your ass, that was just yes, I had that. That was just in my case, like, and with the remark, oh, nice skirt. That was just part of the job. I just felt, well, that must be normal. And but it's not just women. Huh? If you look around and you see, there's a lot of men that experience either exactly the same, or that experience a different type of pressure. It's pressure nonetheless. And I think we as students, as when we started into our working lives, we were not prepared for that. None of us were prepared for that. So I feel that that whatever we experience, and it's valid, it's too much. And I also feel that it may be common that people experience stress, but it's actually, like you said, it's not normal. It's not normal. So
it's not normal, and it's there's a stigma associated with it when you start to speak up, at least then. I think now we're much further along than we were. And so things are getting better. And so we'll just hopefully keep on that trajectory. So, okay, so that being said, let's get to the good part.
How do we get over that?
How do we deal with a toxic work environment? So, of course, I'll hand over Carolina, chime in here as you feel free. For me, I'll just start off saying, for me, it was doing self-care without even knowing that it was self-care. It was intentionally. So to your point about not wanting to go back to family, what I used to do at the time was, when I got off work, and I worked in downtown San Francisco, I would, before I got home, I would go for a walk. And at the time, downtown San Francisco was like the epicenter for the best shopping. And for a person who loves to dress up, that was my self-care. I would go shopping before I went home. And so that allowed me to get rid of all the stress and toxicity before I reached home to my kids, or at the time I had only one kid. So for me, that self-care piece was important. And on the weekends, taking some time, being intentional about taking some time for myself to rid myself of all the physical impact, the mental impact, so that come Monday, I was prepared, at least in a better state of mind, to go and do it all over again. Right?
Yeah. So overcoming workplace trauma and building up your confidence, and getting rid of that stress, and getting sort of non-accepted, how do you say that you getting to a point where you no longer accept that new stress and pressure to come in. self-care is definitely a big part of it. But there are other tricks as well. So there's a couple of quick wins that I can share with you, and then there's a couple of things that you can do on the long run. So of course, self-care is a big thing. You know, it's when you are in a toxic environment and you feel that pressure the entire day, then self-care, the it can be any stage that is less toxic than what you're experiencing, right? And very often we see that as self-care. But what happens is that can go into two directions. You can either say, well, I will take a glass of wine by the end of the day, which is fine. If it's a glass of wine, if it becomes a bottle, then that self-care sort of there's a little bit of a balance you need to seek in between what is self-care and what is considered, too much and also toxic in a different way, but this time you're doing it to yourself, what is a coping mechanism? And so there's of course a lot of things that you can do, many things. So what I really always encourage people that are in that highly stressed environment, what I really encourage them to do is put in refueling stations. Now this was once, I think it was, I completely forgot who I got this from. Usually it just rolls out of my mouth like that. Refueling stations are basically points in and around your workplace that you can recharge. And so one of the things that I always had with me, whenever I felt that huge stress buildup, I had a book, and it was a very thin book. It could fit in my back pocket, and I would force myself to read one chapter. It had these little poems. There were nothing there were nothing special. They were just, little poems with a positive note. And so I took that book everywhere. And if you look at it now, I still have it. I should have taken it here. It looks like it's worn. It practically falls apart. And every time I read the words of those poems, I could see a different essence in it, a different message that it gave me. And maybe reading one of those poems would maybe cost me a minute. But they made me laugh, and they made me realize that, okay, this is, reality now. Now I can go back. I had a moment of laughter. Laughter is absolutely the best medicine for any type of stress. We literally can laugh the stress out of our bodies.
Yeah.
So that refueling stations. I would also force myself, even if I didn't have to go to the bathroom and put my wrists under cold water just for 30 seconds. And putting your wrists under cold water. So what happens is when you're stressed and when you feel that pressure and when you have all these thoughts that you cannot stop having, putting your wrists under cold water, it lowers your heartbeat. And it's funny enough, just because you put it on your wrist, your body registers that it's getting colder, and it will lower your heart rate, and it will slowly squeeze, let's say, all the veins a little bit. It's a natural response on the body, which will give you a sort of an instant, immediate response, that physical response of a mini relaxation. Now, one mini relaxation doesn't do much. So it was really a once an hour thing that I would just do that for 30 seconds. And it's a quick win. It's a quick win. And I would do breath work. So before I would go into my office, I would sit down, whether it was in the train or whether it was in the car, I would sit down and I would pick a point somewhere on a wall that I could stare at, because, I was still a little bit environment conscious, that I wouldn't want to sit in a bus with my eyes closed, that people thought, what's she doing? right? And I would pick a point on the wall or on the bus or on the window. There's always little things that you can see. And for just 30 seconds, I would just concentrate on breathing low in my belly. Because what happens when you are stressed, you breathe up here. And by lowering that, you're telling your body that it's okay and that you can relax. And what happens with the brain is because you're focused on the breath, just for those 30 seconds, your thoughts are not continuing to move and to you just put a very little moment of a stop to that. Now, all these 30 seconds this and 30 seconds that, in total, they cost you a minute per hour, maybe two. However, you teach your body that every hour, and you teach your brain too, that every hour it has a break and little breaks. And this for your system, it can be exactly that what it needs to lower your shoulders a little bit again, to not have all those problems, and to calm your mind just a little bit.
Oh, wow, those are great exercises. I definitely didn't know about the cold water. That's a new one for me. I'm gonna try that. But I really like that, the quick wins, the idea of having those quick wins in those moments when obviously you can't run out and go for a run and come back and feel rejuvenated and stuff like that. So for me, what really helped was having a strong support system. I come from a large family. I don't know if you've picked up on the fact that I'm extroverted, so I talk. And just being able to talk about it with family, with friends, was in itself a huge part of the healing process. I can't keep that kind of stuff in. I like to stay jovial and happy. So one way that I recommend for people with clients is talk about it, find that trusted friend. That support system that you surround yourself with is very key to your healing process. And so don't minimize the idea or the thought of having, family members or trusted friends that you can go to, in my opinion. So that's my thought. Sorry, let me just check the chat. We have some. Oh, okay. Yes, Susan says she's going to try that too. I know. Oh, sorry.
I hope you will all try it, because it's really the wrists under cold water. It's
Yeah.
it's a lifesaver. It's a
Yeah,
lifesaver.
I'm gonna try it after this.
You might have seen another version of that. There's another version of that circling the internet at the moment, where people put their head in a bucket with of ice, their face. But at work that's a little bit messy. So better
Yeah,
put
that
your
would mess
wrists
up
under.
my makeup.
Exactly.
Okay, so some other tips to rebuilding your resilience and self-compassion. For me, it was you just making a conscious effort to realize that the issue isn't me. It had nothing to do with my competency and my accomplishments, my knowledge and all of that. It was more so just the environment and what that company as a whole had created for us workers. Now, it takes a while to shift to that mindset. I will agree. It didn't happen overnight. But as I set boundaries in terms of allowing what people said and not get to me, finding the quick ways of coping with it in that moment so it wouldn't get to the core and start to, destroy other aspects of my being. So for me, again, setting clear boundaries. I could not control what people said to me, but what I started to learn was to control how I let it affect me. I would recognize their comments, but then I had developed the resilience to filter it through my thoughts. Like, is it true or is it not true? Am I a bad employee or am I good? If I could demonstrate, if I could counteract what I was told by practical or like real data that demonstrated my competence, then I just let it roll off. Now that takes a lot of time. I wouldn't consider that a quick win, but it's just ways that I developed over the years to just deal with it so that it wouldn't impact my mental health and and lead to other issues later on.
Yeah.
And then engaging in activities, again, being an extrovert, the more I went out, socialized, the better I felt about myself. I intentionally didn't stay away from the social events that happened. Again, the bad apples were few and far between, but they were toxic enough to impact. But I made sure that it didn't make me shy away from interacting with others in the company that would help give me the visibility to continue to advance my career. So those are things that you want to consider during this season or that season where you're dealing with the toxicity of your workplace environment. Thoughts?
Absolutely. So yes, it's actually if you look at the process you just described, so that's a process that is it's called a belief circle. So the way we have and this is a little bit in depth, but the belief circle is basically how your confidence is being torn down, and it's also how you build your confidence back up. It's not in the slides actually, so I can paste that in later and we can send it to everyone.
Yeah.
So the belief circle is actually we have a certain belief about ourselves. Then because of that belief, and that belief can be about ourselves because it was ours originally, it can also be because somebody else made us believe that. One of the beliefs that that everybody has in this world is that somehow we're not good enough and we're not enough of something. So it can be I'm not strong enough, I'm not fast enough, which in corporate is very often I'm not fast enough, I didn't finish this fast enough, which comes up a lot. And then of course I'm not smart enough, because there was somebody that said, why did you do such a stupid thing, right? The microaggression that comes back there. Well, actually that's full-blown aggression that comes in. And all those thoughts, all those beliefs, they plant like a little seed. And from that seed, the next time that we experience a similar situation, thoughts come up. So, and they automatically come up. Oh, last time they told me I wasn't good enough. And did I do well? And you're going to doubt about your presentation that you made. And all these thoughts come up. Now, from these thoughts, and even though it happens super fast in a flash of a second, an emotion is generated. So you think the thought and you feel the emotion almost instantaneously. And that emotion can be a certain type of uncomfortableness or sadness. Nervousness isn't an emotion, but it's a physical reaction to an emotion. And so we get that, we go into a little circle there where emotions trigger our thoughts and our thoughts trigger our emotions, right? And so with those three, if the belief is not good enough, we basically start to move from from emotions to thoughts, and we think ourselves into an even worse situation than the situation already is. Now, what happens at that moment? We take action, but if we are confident, your action is different than when you're in doubt about if you're doing things well, right? So you go into action and you feel, let's say, 60% confident. Then your action is also going to be 60%, because you're not going to be standing there saying, this is what I think, this is my idea, and this is how we're going to do it. And say, well, we might be able to do this and then possibly be able to do that. So the entire words that we use, our body language, everything changes. And of course, then the results are going to be completely different. And people are going to think, well, this is apparently open for debate. Let me give my opinion. And some people will say, well, I don't think this is what we want. And so that's going to feed back into the belief of, you see, I wasn't good enough. Now, the same happens when you want to rebuild your confidence. It starts with checking your belief. What do I believe about this situation? What are my experiences that I had with similar situations? And basically, the moment you think negative and you can feel a negative nervousness in your body, you know that you're somewhere in that circle. And so the way out of that is with meditations, with very simple exercises. So that change doesn't have to be hard. Change does not have to be hard. If you take anything from this workshop today, it should be that change does not have to be hard. But it does take a certain amount of knowing what to change and where to change it. So on each of these 5, because there's 5 points in the circle, you can take a certain action. If you notice your negative thoughts, you can say, oh, what if this doesn't work out? Switch it around and say, hey, but what if it does? What would happen if it does work out? And you start writing the positive answers down. Now, that sounds like something super simple, and it's like, okay, that will, take me a while, but at some point your brain will start to pick up. And you will feel that it starts to work. Now, like you said, Ma, it's not an overnight thing because your brain needs to adjust to this new situation. But it is something that can be done, and we do not have to stay in that common but not normal circle of the rat race and rushed and pressured and in acceptance of what everybody else does to us. There is an amount of control, even if we cannot control our environment.
Yeah, very good point. I totally agree that having that switch, being able to switch from the negative self-talk to the positive is so necessary. And I think that that's a quick win, that the more you do it, it can make significant impact in how you overcome the toxicity, the workplace trauma, and in addition to rebuilding back your confidence. So don't minimize the process of switching from the negative self-talk to the positive in affirmations. Try and look at things from a positive perspective as best as you can. What are the things that you could gain from this? I think from every situation in life, at least my approach is that there is some good that can come out from every situation in life. There's always lessons to be learned. There's impact to be made. And so you want to focus on those positive things. Constantly remind yourself of what your strengths are. That is one thing that wasn't apparent to me all the time. In the workplace, we're often told what we're not doing right versus what we are doing right. And you are your own best advocate. So you want to keep yourself abreast of what your strengths are and your accomplishments. And you will know it based on how you feel there, or depending on the job that you work. There's some metrics that are that are absolutes, that demonstrate how competent you are in the work that you do and your strengths. So don't allow anybody to take that power from you and strip you of your confidence because they're telling you that you're lacking in this area or that area. We all have our strengths. We all have the things that we have accomplished in life that make us who we are today and why we have achieved what we have achieved so far.
Yes,
all right.
I agree.
Yeah. So in the interest of time,
Yes.
Okay. So, so we touched a lot on some of this already, in terms of creating clear boundaries. You're welcome to take a picture of this slide and to, if you find it helpful. But of course, we've touched on this, creating clear boundaries to protect your well-being, your mental health. What does that look like? It's okay to say no. It's okay to speak up for yourself. It's okay to let them know that you're not comfortable with the approach that they're making. And it's okay to realize you don't have to stay in that role. There are other roles out there. There are other companies that have better working environments, especially post-pandemic. I think things have improved significantly. So get up, so you seize the opportunity to move around, to explore other areas, other companies whose values and workplace environments align with yours. And when you're in that interview process, do not hesitate to ask the right questions that will give you insight as to the workplace culture before you make your decision to work there. That's one mistake I made, one too many times, but will not make that mistake again. So as you're exploring other companies, don't hesitate to ask those tough questions. It's better you have a good understanding coming in of what to expect than to get in there and then you're like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. Carolina, did I leave anything out?
Well, and I also want to address that in some cases you can't go out. You're stuck, like you were when you had your work permit thing.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's or when you have, for example, a job in a company that you need because it's close to the school of your kids, or because there is something that keeps you there. Now, even if that is the case, that doesn't mean you're powerless. You do have the power to change your reaction, and nobody else can take that power away from you. You
Exactly.
are in control, and you do get to experience that less when you start working. Instead of working trying to change your environment, change how your environment comes in, how it comes in to your how you feel about it, let's say. And that's I mean, I feel that that's also very important to mention. There is, even if you're stuck in your job, you are not powerless.
That's true. Very good point. All right, so we're getting to the end of this. Anyone have any questions? How has this been for you? I hope this has been helpful. Some of the strategies, we're recording this, so we'll be able to, I'll probably send some notes. I can send the link as well to those who might want to check it out afterwards. Very helpful. Thank you, Ifeoma. So good to see you.
Feel free
So
to come off mute, by the way, and share.
yes. Yes,
It's
please feel free.
we appreciate feedback.
Yeah, exactly. This is we're all here to learn. I don't see this being a one and done type of conversation. Please put in the chat if this is something you would like us to continue to explore. Maybe somewhere down the line have another one. And what you would like to see, and we would love to get your feedback. Before we let you go, if you want to work with me, I encourage you, please scan this code, sign up to my monthly newsletter. I release only once a month. You get a freebie when you scan this barcode. You get a freebie for overcoming overthinking, strategies to overcome your overthinking. If you're like me, I overthink things. I think it was one of the side effects of the trauma. And working with us here, please feel free to take a snapshot of this. Other than my home address, LinkedIn is my other address, virtual address. So you can find me on LinkedIn, follow me, talk, whatever. And Carolina, you want to chime in?
Well, for me, I have several options there. I am most on LinkedIn personally, And if you would like to just talk to me after this workshop, maybe you have some questions that you still would like to have answered, I'm very open to just have a chat with you. My calendar link is in the slide, so take a snapshot of it and just book that free call, and you can ask me anything.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I think both of us we've been through this. Feel free to reach out to either of us, both of us. We have two different approaches to how we work with clients. So our DMs are open to you, free consultations as well. Thank you guys so much. Feel free to come off mute if you have anything else you want to share. We still have a couple of minutes, but I wanted to also make sure that we're respectful of your time. But I think speaking on this topic helps to just heal. And like some of you have said in the chat, just knowing that you're not alone makes a difference. Yeah. Just knowing that your experience is not unique. Yeah.
And learning from other people's strategies.
Yes.
I mean, there is everybody has experienced this and went through it. Even if we only have small things that we did to cope with the situation, those small things can help other people. So yeah. I'm sure we all did some things that we weren't even aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I would really like to thank everybody for being here today. I enjoyed thanking Ma for the space, for creating the space to have this conversation today. And I will be here for another 5 minutes for whoever wants to have a question. And if not, then I wish you all an amazing day, and we'll be in touch.
Yep, same here. We are here for you. And this has been a great conversation. Thank you all. Thank you. Spread the word. I'm hoping again that we can continue to have this dialogue, create safe spaces for us, and make sure that we are supporting each other. So this is not goodbye. It is, how do they say that? It's goodbye for now, right?